Hello, fans of the Celtic Way. This is the Thursday morning briefing. Is it the morning briefing or just the briefing, Ryan?
The morning briefing, yeah, the morning
Right,
because
I need
sometimes
to
we
note
have them
that down.
after as well. We have a post press conference ones as well. We usually call
You have
them
the
the evening
post
briefing,
press
which is a bit
conference
weird.
briefing, the evening.
Yeah,
Do you have a lunch briefing? No.
not that I know of. It's that I've not been invited to it, if that's the case.
Yeah, we've got a wee running joke about a briefcase and Brendan Rodgers because he's business-like this time. I don't know why I've just told you that, to be honest. It's a bit of a group chat patter. We could do with that at the moment because yeah, things aren't ideal. But anyway, we've covered all of that. When did I last speak to you? Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah, we've got a wee bit to get through on today's video. Hello, everyone. Sorry we were a wee bit late there. Appreciate you hanging on. Hope you're all well. We've got a bit to chat about some games last night. Maybe a wee bit of chat on Bojan Miovski. I know we've kind of covered that before, but he scored a double last night. Super League stuff, European Super League. There was a development this morning. Whether that
Absolutely.
affects Celtic is kind of hearsay at this stage, but I think it's worth talking about. The B team as well, and obviously just generally about Celtic. First of all, MPH Group and Navian sponsoring this video. MPH Group are Scotland's award-winning family-run all-trade specialist covering mainland Scotland, and as you know by now, they have an enticing Navian boiler winter promotion just for you. If you choose them, you're choosing top tier efficiency, and you'll also be getting a free Navian internet controller. A very handy device that. Navian are also big dogs, as are MPH Group. MPH offer flexible finance options, so get involved with them if you fancy it, and thanks again to them for sponsoring this video. I'm getting better at that as time goes on. I was kind of struggling in my early days. I found a kind of happy medium between reading it and glancing up at the camera as well.
Yeah, I was the same when I was doing it. Sometimes you just need that 50-50. If you've got it in front of you, but you can still say most of it off by heart and put your own wee twang to it, then you're doing all right. But I thought that was authentic and seamless, Hamish. So you're doing a
Thank
good
you.
job.
Thank you. Yeah, they're legends, MPH Group and Navian. Certainly performing well, unlike Celtic, but this weekend can bring new hopes and optimism and all of that kind of nonsense. Me and Tony had a bit of that yesterday. I think we were a bit more upbeat yesterday, kind of looking forward to the game against Livingston on Saturday now. And yeah, fresh opportunity for the team to hopefully do what they do best and start putting on good performances, winning matches, etc. I guess that's the thing about football. You've always got the next match, and the team have always got the next match to prove themselves. But we kind of agreed something probably has to change for the weekend.
Yeah, definitely performance-wise, things need to change. Things need to have a bit of an upturn, I would say. I think we're all more or less over the result on Saturday. It was a bit of a tough one to stomach. I was certainly feeling it for the next couple of days going into the new week. But that's past us now. Maybe a wee bit disappointed with how results went last night with regard to the league table, looking a bit more closer than you would have liked, especially with how far away the two teams were a couple of months ago. But the weekend brings new opportunities, and it brings about a chance for Celtic to put a win, to get back to winning ways, and hopefully put some pressure on the other teams in the league. They're going up against a team that are certainly struggling at the moment. With Livingston, it seems every press conference that David Martindale does at the moment, he's blaming something. There's always an excuse. Yeah, that's definitely a game that Celtic should be looking at to be getting back on form. Certain players should be looking at as a means to get back on form with their individual performances. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the game on Saturday. Last game before Christmas, you're hoping it's a bit of a better atmosphere, and Celtic get back to winning ways and get the 3 points on the board.
They did at least score last night, Livingston, for the first time in I think over 10 hours of football.
Scored
Actually took the
first, didn't
lead.
they?
Yeah, took the lead against Aberdeen. Guthrie, I think, with the goal, and then Miovski got a double for Aberdeen. I've not actually seen the highlights, but he's getting a lot of plaudits. Barry Robson was talking about him after the game as well, saying we'll just have to say to Dave, that's Dave Cormack, the Aberdeen chairman, that Miovski's not allowed to go. There is a model at this club, and we've signed a lot of good players. We're a good team when we're at it, and with Bojan and others who perform well in big European games, people look at that. We want him to stay as long as he can, and hopefully he'll be here for a good bit longer. We've obviously covered the Miovski stuff in the past. I was kind of on the fence a wee bit, I think, a couple of weeks ago when we spoke about it, and the news came out that Celtic have been scouting him basically all the way through this season, as far as I understand it. I looked at his goals earlier. He's actually not scored like a crazy amount of goals this season, but if you look at the games that he's scored in, he has scored against us. He scored at least one against Rangers. He scored against PAOK in the Conference League. He scored against Helsinki in the Conference League. He scored a goal against Hibs. Like, he seems like he's a kind of big game player, and I'm kind of coming round to the idea that he might actually be pretty good, a pretty decent signing, a kind of proven signing. He's not at Kyogo levels, but he could get a good run at it in January. And I'm kind of coming around to the idea of us signing Miovski.
Yeah, I think the fact that there'd be no or little to no acclimatisation needed for the striker as well would be a big factor, especially down to the fact that the Asia Cup, we don't know exactly who's going to get called up, but we can guess that probably the two certainties are O and Maeda in terms of squad lists for that tournament. Don't know about Kyogo because he didn't get called up for the World Cup, but at the same time he's been called up for the past couple of international breaks when he's been fit.
Scored as well, didn't he?
He's been in and out with Moriasu's squads, so that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. The fact that he's not in form as well could be a big factor. Maybe somebody else could be fancied ahead of him. I just think with Miovski, it's a bit of a. I do like Miovski. I've been banging that drum for a wee while now. I think he does score in the big games. I think, like you, I've noticed that the goals against PAOK, the goals against Hibs, Rangers, he's always turning up in these big games, as you say. And with Celtic, every game that you play for Celtic's a big game. So if he could bring that to Celtic, and be a viable option, in the absence of potentially Kyogo and O and Daizen Maeda as well, to be fair, but then push them for that place when they return, that could only be a good thing for the striking options. Just think he's a physical presence as well. I know O's got a bit about him, but he's not totally a physical presence. He's a bit of a hybrid between Kyogo and Giakoumakis. Sometimes you need a player to just force the issue, and I think Miovski would be able to do that for Celtic. The only problem I've got, and I think this is a problem with all the strikers, is they're not getting enough delivery into the box. And who's to say that it would be any different with Miovski in there? I think
Robert making that point, I'll just put it on screen. He's mentioned Harry Kane.
Yeah, Harry Kane would struggle, although I think he's a very, very good distributor as well, and playmaker. Yeah, phenomenal against Wolfsburg. Probably the best striker in the world, but this isn't a Harry Kane podcast, so I think Miovski would be a good signing. Depends on how much they would be able to get for him. I don't know, maybe potentially a swap deal could be involved. Swap deal plus money, potentially a player in there. I do like him. I think he's shown it. He's shown it in the Conference League. He's shown it in the Premiership for 2 seasons now. And if the fee's viable, then I think it would be a no-brainer to bring him in, because I think his trajectory is only upwards. 24 years old. Celtic have got to plan for the future as well. Kyogo's not getting any younger. He's 28, turning 29. They've got to be looking at strikers for the future as well. And a 24-year-old, that would be a perfect sort of pool in terms of age to work with, and then develop further. It's not as if he's a young player coming in. He'd be experienced, but he's still got that onus to improve, I would say.
I mean, the argument is always, if he's scoring for Aberdeen with better service at Celtic, he would score more goals. It doesn't always work out. Mikey Bahoy bringing up Nadir Chifchi, which is probably a kind of obvious example, given I don't know, was Chifchi Turkish? Similar part of the world, I think. North Macedonia and Turkey, I could be wrong with that, but similar kind of
in the same
probably ages as well, and maybe similar kind of players to an extent. Maybe Miovski's a bit more likely to bang a goal in with his head, but I can see that argument. I personally at the time thought Chifchi would be a really good signing. Obviously didn't work out. I don't know. It's hard to say. Has Miovski maybe done more in his time at Aberdeen than Chief Chee's done at Dundee United? I can't really remember, to be honest. But I think Chief Chee's an example of it not working. There's also examples of it working. I mean, Scott McDonald's an obvious player a number of years ago now that we brought in from Motherwell and obviously went on to do really well for us. So I think Miovski would be a good signing. Vincent thinks that as well. So much so that he shouted his message. Sign Miovski and he will get better while playing with better players. Again, that's an argument. I don't know. I just get a feeling that Miovski would probably come in and do quite well. But yeah, we've probably spent 10 minutes on that, so we can move on from that. Have you seen this Super League stuff at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was reading a couple of things this morning. I was wondering if we were actually going to talk about it on the morning briefing, because I think it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting ruling. The fact that the courts have ruled against UEFA and FIFA in that regard. So I think it opens up a can of worms, a can of negative worms, but potentially
negative
positive
worms.
Yeah, I know.
What do they look like?
I don't know. They're very sad. Just see a worm with a sad face on. I think it's a bit of both. Celtic have got to look at it as a bit of opportunity as well. Celtic have got to be front and centre of any reconstruction of any league or whatever. They've got to do what's best for them, and I'm sure the people. This is where there's been a lot of negatives with Peter Lawwell coming back onto the board with the chairman's role. This is where he could probably show his expertise, because he's always front and centre. I think he's part of that European committee. Having a guy like him who wants Celtic to turn a profit in certain areas as well could be very, very important in the future. I think football as a whole, for good or for bad, it's changing. It's going to be changing. You've seen that with the developments with the Super League. Yes, there was a lot of fan backlash. Fan backlash was the reason why it didn't go through, because the amount of anger that went to the owners. But I think this will come again. I always said that when that didn't pass through, I was like, this is only the first time. There's going to be so many instances of this happening. There will be reconstruction one way or the other. You look at the Saudi clubs, will probably try and get them involved too. I think it's got negatives, but it's also got positives as well. And Celtic should be listening and seeing what's transpiring, because if there's a way for them to improve their position, then I'd be all for reconstruction. I know that's a bit of an unpopular opinion, but Celtic have got to do what's best for them.
I don't know if it's unpopular. People can let us know. I'm guessing there'll be a wide range of opinions in the live chat. Because they had the initial European Super League that was a complete disaster. It was a bizarre 24, 48 hours. They announced it out of nowhere, and everyone was kind of looking at it and going, wait a minute, all these major clubs, some of the biggest clubs in Europe have just said they're leaving their domestic leagues. They actually quit their domestic leagues before to join this new European Super League with no relegation, before fan backlash led to them all, pretty much certainly all the English teams, pulling out of it. So that was the first kind of incarnation of it. So everyone's a wee bit kind of a fair bit against the European Super League. I think they came out with a second proposal though, or certainly there was, if it wasn't official, it was leaked, that allowed other teams to get involved. There was maybe even a mention of Celtic somewhere in there. I think it was multiple divisions. I'm not sure if it was still a closed shop under that, or if there was an opportunity for domestic leagues to feed into it. I'm a big fan of Scottish football. I think it's got a lot going for it, but as time goes on, and you go out to Celtic Park on a Saturday and you see teams parking the bus against us, and sometimes the quality of the opposition, it is a struggle. And that's not me having a go at the opposition. They need to do what they need to do to get results, and it's not their fault and it's not our fault that there's such a disparity between ourselves, our rivals, and the rest of Scottish football. It's just the way it is. But I just wonder, that Feyenoord game, matchday 6 of the Champions League, just loved watching that game. I know it was kind of meaningless, but it was just a great game with two teams having a go at each other. And I just thought, in the back of my mind, imagine we had a league where we played teams like Feyenoord and Ajax and PSV and maybe some Scandinavian teams and Belgian teams, and that was our league, it would be so exciting. I know we'd be giving up a fair bit in Scottish football. Maybe there's an arrangement where we could still play some games in Scotland. Maybe they could sort something out. But I've come round to the idea of Celtic really needing to move on at some stage in the future for the betterment of ourselves and kind of European football as a whole, because I just think the gulf these days between the English Premier League and basically everyone else, certainly teams in Scotland and countries like the Netherlands and Belgium, is too big. So I mean Vincent saying there Celtic are a very big club. Still shouting, Vincent, but appreciate your comment. We're a massive club. We are globally, for me, globally in terms of fan base and identity and all of that, Celtic are a top 20 club in the world. I have no doubt about that. Our issue is we play in Scotland, and yeah, I have a lot of love for Scottish football, but I just think the potential. Imagine Celtic in a European Super League. If Celtic played in the European Super League, we could dream once again of winning European competitions, because we'd have the money, we'd have all of that stuff. So that's where I'm at the moment.
I just look at how other sports are changing as well as viable alternatives. You look at golf with Live Golf that's now merging with the PGA Tour, I believe. So it shows that competition was there, and it scared the PGA Tour so much, or it was the other way about, and they conjoined. I just think that sport and sport, the way we see it's changing. It's a very modern world, but the problem is that football is a very, very traditional sport still. I know there's a lot of change going on nowadays, but it's still very, I'm not going to say archaic, because I think that's the wrong word, but very traditional, in the sense that people don't like change until they see it happening and they see the positives that would come with it. For Celtic, I think there'd be far more positives than negatives. They would finally see their potential as a big European club. Playing against, I'd love to be playing every week, second week, against a team like Feyenoord, PSV. The Belgian teams could get brought into, Anderlecht could become a force again, Standard Liège, etc., etc. Plus all of the bigger teams as well. I think in order for a European Super League proposal to pass, the higher ups need the sponsorship of the smaller teams that would benefit from it. I'm not saying smaller in terms of Celtic being a small team next to these teams, but maybe not as big in European stature. This could possibly springboard them to the next level. And if they can get that sort of backing from clubs like that, you would have to imagine that Rangers would probably be invited to it as well. The two teams would, in that regard. I just think it would benefit the club. Every second game would be like an away day to a big European city or something. Think about all the supporters clubs that are around the world. They could probably have a game at their doorstep. I know that would be bad for the traditional away fans that are currently at the club, but it would also bring about change, and different fans would be able to see different games. They're travelling, people could choose to go on trips as well. I'm trying to outline the positives. The negatives of that are, you'd get some amount of backlash, especially from the rest of the Scottish League clubs that presumably maybe wouldn't get an invite to the two proceedings. But that would be something that would come as it developed. But it's definitely a watch this space, I would say, at the moment. I just think football and sport as a whole are changing, and Celtic have got to be at the forefront if that is to be the case. They've got to do what's best for themselves and realise their potential, because I think Celtic have so much potential as a brand and as a global superpower in football, just due to the city, due to the fact that I think you could bring the atmospheres in. You could bring in your Man Uniteds, Chelsea's, Arsenal's, and then Barcelona, Real Madrid every second week. Imagine Celtic being on the same pedestal as those teams. That's what dreams are made of, and I would love to see that at Celtic Park. Yes, there's negatives, but I think there's a bit more positives than negatives.
Yeah, and I think this is going to happen. It's going to happen, in the next, 10, 15 years, I would suggest. That's the way this is going, and as the kind of gap gets bigger between, the English Premier League, maybe a few of the other leagues and the rest, this is a certainty as far as I'm aware. I'm not saying,
it's
the
not
next
going
few
away.
years, but yeah, it certainly isn't. Yeah, few people asking, why are we talking about this? The news today, judges at the Grand Chamber of the European Court of Justice say that UEFA rules blocking the formation of the European Super League went against EU laws. That seems to suggest that a similar competition could be launched in the future. So it is a case of watch this space. Celtic B, or I don't know, Celtic under somethings, went down 3-1 to Chelsea in the Premier League International Cup last night. Decent enough performance in London for the sound of things, despite the result. Daniel Cummins scored their goal. You heard much about him?
I've not heard much about that. The only thing I heard about last night was the result in that game. But you look at the youngsters at Chelsea. Now Chelsea are making a conscientious effort to sign young players to then progress into the first team. They're signing quite a few Brazilian young players. There's Brazilians that aren't even they are officially signed, but they're going to join in like 2024, 2025. They're definitely planning for the future. But they've certainly, Chelsea have been one of those teams that have developed young players in the past. Maybe not a lot of them have made it into the first team. You think of Reece James and Mason Mount, and before then maybe Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but there's so many good players. Even if they don't make it at Chelsea, they'll probably make it at another English club in the Championship.
Charlie Masonda, was he Chelsea?
Yeah, he was as well. Conor Gallagher as well. He's now playing for the first team.
Islam Farouz, all those years ago.
Yeah, he was at Celtic first, and then he went down to. I think he's making hats now. I think that was the last time I checked. He started a fashion brand or something like that. I remember he came up to Hibs as well, and he played about 2 or 3 games. But that was definitely a misfire. Yeah, I think Chelsea
You've got a few wee mic troubles, Ryan, so you might need to see if you can fix that. Because I know we'll have these legends will be commenting any second. You were talking so much sense there as well. Aye. Anything you want to say? Try again.
Hear me? 1, 2.
Yes, there we go. You're back.
Right, sorry about that. So it's a terrible listening experience.
I don't know what the hell happened there. You suddenly sounded like you were in a microwave.
Right, that's really weird. Definitely not one of them. Yeah, the fact that it was somewhat close in that game, 3-1, indicates that there was progress. But I just think some of the B team results this season have been quite dismal, to be honest with you. Going 2-0 up against Feyenoord. I know it's a slightly different pool of players because of the age category, but to go 2-0 up against Feyenoord and to lose 3-2, I know it's all about learning experiences at that level, but in order to play for Celtic, you've got to hold on to leads, especially in games like that. So that was disappointing. I just want to see progress, and the only way we'll see progress is if these players then make it into the first team. It's all good developing these players, and then they go down south when the first sign of a big team comes calling. But I want to see these players then get integrated into the first team. I want to see a Mitchell Frame. I want to see Anderson as well. I think he's out on loan though at the moment. There's another boy. Is it Daniel Kelly as well? He's quite a highly rated youngster too. So I want to see these guys acclimatise themselves into the first team in the very near future.
Would you start Mitchell Frame on Saturday? We had this debate yesterday.
I don't know if just because he wasn't called up after the game in Europe on Wednesday and Saturday, so I don't know how close he is to the first team. It would be quite interesting. That is definitely one of the games that if you're going to pick a game for Mitchell Frame to play in, it would probably be against Livingston. Maybe a bit of a surprise package. Livingston will know that most times they'll be coming up against Greg Taylor at left back, so maybe even to throw a curveball and put Frame in. A game at home just before Christmas. That could be something interesting, something for Brendan Rodgers to look at. I always think the supporters will get a bit of a lift off of that, seeing a youth player thrown into proceedings. It brings a wee bit of excitement as well. You see the future, or what should be the future, coming into the first team. So if he is fit and available, then that definitely could be an option that Brendan Rodgers could go down.
Yeah, a few people saying that there's no chance of Frame coming in. I tend to agree with that, to be honest. I personally would probably start him. I just think that the two left backs, the first team left backs we have at the moment, are both really, really struggling. I think they're both getting targeted. Taylor, we've kind of spoken about. Bernabe at the weekend, speechless about how poor he was, to be honest.
I walked past him last night in a shopping centre.
You tell him he should go and get his haircut finished?
He had a hat on, so I couldn't see if he'd already sorted it or not.
Someone's obviously had a word and go and stick something in your head, mate.
Somebody in the comments, just want to bring up a comment just quickly. Chillpill says Frame maybe maybe Bucky Thistle. That could definitely be a game that he could go into. It'd be the first game after a winter break though, so it depends if you want to give other players that time to acclimatise back into their match fitness. It could be a game that he could feature in, maybe even off the bench in the second half.
Any other big shouts for the team on Saturday that you're jumping out at you, or any players you think cannot play?
Mikey Johnson, I don't think can play again. I'll be honest with you. And I know that sounds very, very harsh. And he might even start again because it seems as if he's undroppable. It seems as if now this is the one point that he is fit and he is playing games. It's the fact that probably a lot of supporters and people covering the club don't want to see him in the team, to be honest, especially after that last game when he got taken off at half time. It's an interesting one because by the time Saturday rolls about, it'll be a week since the Hearts game. You don't know what sort of state the squad's in terms of squad morale. A week on, we'll be hearing from a player later on today as well as the manager tomorrow, so I guess we'll get more on potential injury returns. I think Abada's still a couple of weeks away. Tati's maybe a couple of weeks after him, so Iwata, yeah, I'd like to see him back in the team, because I thought he was doing okay. I thought he started really well against Feyenoord. He didn't have a good game against Kilmarnock, but nobody had a really good game against Kilmarnock, to be fair to them. He started well against Feyenoord. I think it was the outstretched leg and then picked up an injury. But yeah, I like what he brings, even if he's not going to be the starting number 6 going into the long-term future. I think that's an area that Celtic will probably need to strengthen in further. They might need to part with a bit of cash to get somebody that's outstanding in that role. I think you need that for Europe. You need a number 6, especially in Celtic's case. You need somebody to put out fires before they get to the centre backs. But for now, I think Iwata's a good option. You're better off having any number 6 in that position rather than shoehorn Callum McGregor, who is not a number 6, into that role. If you're going to play Callum McGregor, you've got to play him as a number 8, especially with Hatate out. You need some of the creativity, and McGregor can give that.
I just wonder again, I'm going back to left back, I'm just wondering, thinking about Brendan Rodgers, and again, he was really critical of the team at the weekend, and I can only assume that Greg Taylor was one of the players he was talking about. I wonder if he puts Scales at left back and brings Nawrocki in next to Carter Vickers. Again, I don't think I would be against that, and I think to me that's probably a better shout than starting Mitchell Frame. Again, it's a big statement to make, but I think Rodgers is at that point where he kind of has to make a statement at the weekend with his starting lineup, because something has to change. If that team comes out at 1:45 on Saturday and it's like the same lineup as last week, you're going to hear the groans at around Celtic Park when people see that team. I feel like something has to be different. I would certainly hope Maida would come back in, and I think as much as he struggled last week, a week down the line, he bring a bit of energy. He always brings energy, and I think that can be infectious. So that's a change I'd like to see, and I just wonder about that Scales one as well. John wondering, update on Abada. I'll just put you on the spot completely, Ryan.
We don't have an update yet. We'll hear more tomorrow, but I'm guessing
he doesn't know, John. He's hopeless. He doesn't have a clue. He's now going to try and pad it out and pretend that he knows. But
politician, MP. It's just, I think the fact that he's on, you've put me on the spot here. The fact that he's now a couple more weeks down since the last time that Brendan Rodgers was asked that would suggest that he is close to returning, or he might even be with the team now. might even be he might be individual training, or he might be training with we don't know yet. That's because it's been a bit of radio silence with regard to that. Obviously the press conference and that will crank it up ever so slightly before the Livingston game, and we'll hear more about potential returns to the team. But I think it'll be a wee bit too soon for him. It would be good to see him in the next 3 or 4 games, because I think Abad has been sorely missed. Just on your Scales point, we seem to be at a position, and this is no slight against Scales, he deserves to be in the team, where we're trying to shoehorn him into other positions just so that he doesn't get dropped out of the team. I wouldn't be against him having a bit of a spell on the bench. How many games has he played in a row now? I just think with Miovski, we need to see more of this guy. We've seen him. I don't think he really put a foot wrong, apart from maybe the Aberdeen goal. He was, but then again, that was Carter Vickers as well.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a double whammy in that regard. But I just think he didn't put a foot wrong in the games that he played for Celtic. He looked like a breath of fresh air. He looked as if he was mobile on the ball. Looked like he could pass out from the back. Maybe one of those sort of players that Celtic have been missing since Christopher Ajer left the club, that could actually drive with the ball. Remember a couple of times he ran forward. This is the early part of the season. Ross County game, he was really doing that, breaking the lines with those moves. So yeah, I would like to see more of him. The fact that he hasn't even been quoted, he is fully fit, but he's not getting quoted. It's a very, very weird one. With Phillips' future all but certain to be going back to Liverpool before going out on loan again, either on loan or permanently to another club, I think now Celtic should be focusing on the present and putting in the players that are going to be there for the second half of the season and then going into next season as well. Miovski is going to be that player. I think he is going to be a starter before long. It's about time we bring him back into the side and acclimatise him once again.
I thought he looked fine, when he started. So I'd like to see him. Agree with you there. Just go through a few comments just to finish off. Dennis Jameson asking, are we monitoring, is it Will Dennis, the keeper at Kelly? There was a mention of this somewhere yesterday?
Yeah, I've got it from a very good source that's there's nothing in that story whatsoever. So it's is
that Derek McInnes your source?
Off the record. I've heard from a good source that there's nothing in that whatsoever. Okay. So, but he's a good goalkeeper, and I have been. I'm sorry, that would have been a good potential talking point, because I do like him. In the couple of performances that he's had against Celtic, he's done really, really well. But there's nothing in that.
Claire wants to talk about Aaron Moy. Says, do you guys think we're missing Aaron Moy in that midfield area since he retired? I've got a thing at the moment where people mention the players that were without this season, and they mention Starfelt and they mention Jota, and they kind of leave it at that. And Aaron Moy for me is just, this time last year, in fact maybe a month on, this time last year, January, kind of February, Moy was like our most important player, and I think we badly missed him this season. I think that's gone under the radar, but I guess that's where we're at, and there's not much we can do about it, sadly. And Stephen saying, personally to me, you got to get that old green screen displaying Melbourne in the background, Hamish. I'll need to work on it. I actually it's actually a blue screen delivered today for another wee project that I'm working on that you might hear about. So exciting stuff. Final comment, Ryan, then we can head off.
In a bit more of a positive frame of mind after this podcast, I was wondering what sort of position we were going to be in with regard to Celtic, but as we get closer to Saturday, it's a chance to get back to winning ways, and I'm definitely feeling a lot more positive. It was interesting, the Super League chat as well. It's good to hear somebody else that kind of shares the same opinion as me in that regard, because it seems like a lot of people have a negative view when it could be more of a positive in the long run. Yeah.
Right, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time again, Ryan. Appreciate you all tuning in this morning for you lot and watching afterwards as well. Don't forget to give us a wee sub. I think we're over 8,000 now, Ryan.
Yeah, 8,200 I think, last time I checked.
It's the Hamish effect we call it. I'm joking. I'm far too...
I'm not.
far too humble for that. No, we're doing well. I appreciate everyone getting stuck in, and hopefully Celtic can give us something to be happy about. Back tomorrow. Is it a full squad tomorrow? All three
should
of
be a 3-man squad tomorrow. Yeah, full house tomorrow.
All good. Right, I'm saying goodbye now. Thanks everyone. See you later.